Genshin Impact's brand new banner, the Sparkling Steps, is here. This is going to be a banner consisting of Klee as well as Sucrose, Noelle, and Xingqiu. Is this banner worth your time? Are these characters good? This banner is full of support damage dealing characters, and we're going to dive into the nitty gritty but quick and informational details that you need to know about these characters as you decide whether or not you want to pull on this banner in Genshin Impact. So the first character we're going to be going over is Klee. She is going to be a premier pyro damage dealer with some very important abilities as well as some nice utility for your team. We're also going to be going over how impactful the constellations are for these characters at the end. That way you want to know if you need those constellations to maximize some of the 4 stars on the banner. So first and foremost, Klee's elemental skill is Jumpy Dumpty. This skill is going to be a skill you activate that has up to 2 charges, so you can store them up, and it's going to throw her precious Jumpy Dumpty out at the enemy. It will bounce around, and then it will blow up, doing AoE pyro damage every bounce, and then at the final bounce, it's going to detonate and drop a ton of little tiny mines as well that will do additional pyro damage. You can use this skill in conjunction with other characters that allow you to group the enemies up and make sure you land all of these damaging attacks on the enemy. Her elemental burst is Sparks and Splash, which is going to allow you to do continuous damage to the enemy while she is out on the battlefield. If you do swap her out, though, because Sparks and Splash is a continuous damage over time effect, you will lose the benefit of her elemental burst. It's one of her main downsides as a damage dealing character early on, because you can't swap her out from her elemental burst. You can use her other skills while she is sparks and splashing, but if you're a player out there who likes to constantly swap in and out between your characters to use all of their skills in conjunction, Sparks and Splash, at least at Constellation 0, is going to give you a little bit of problems in that playstyle. As far as Ascension talents go for this character, she gets 2 talents that work pretty well in conjunction with each other at Ascension 1 and Ascension 4. The first Ascension, a 50% chance to obtain a charge that allows your next charge attack to consume no stamina and do 50% increased damage. Ascension 4 is going to give you the ability to give all of your teammates, including yourself, 2 elemental energy whenever a charge attack results in a critical hit. So you can get free, non-stamina costing charge attacks off, get them to crits if you build her for critical hit rate, and give your whole team elemental energy. As you can see, this is going to be some of where her utility comes from. Now, constellations that are important for Klee, she is a 5-star base character, and a lot of tier lists are rating her around having Constellation 4, Constellation 6. So the biggest thing that she can gain access to early on is Constellation 2, and this is being hit by Jumpy Dumpty, ends the enemy's defense and lowers it by 23% for 10 seconds. This is a pretty substantial amount, especially considering that the Superconduct elemental combination effect has been changed since beta for Genshin Impact to be physical resistance reduction instead of defense down. So defense down is relatively rare as a status ailment currently in Genshin, and she brings a hefty 23% defense down for 10 seconds after she hits an enemy with Jumpy Dumpty. That unlocks at Constellation 2. Constellation 4 is one thing that's going to change the utility and damage of Sparks and Splash. So Sparks and Splash, now with Constellation 4, when she leaves the battlefield while you have Sparks and Splash still activated, she's going to trigger a 555% AoE pyro damage attack. So this is going to be a phenomenal constellation and definitely changes how bursty she can be in your team. Constellations 4 and 6 are where she gets a lot of the utility and damage that she's known for though. And now Constellation 4 augments Sparks and Splash. Leaving the battlefield while Sparks and Splash is currently active is going to trigger a 555% attack AoE pyro damage skill. This is going to be a phenomenal damage increase for her Sparks and Splash, and this is where you see a lot of the burst damage Klees out there. Their Constellation 4, that's how you get that to activate. That is not a native Sparks and Splash Constellation 0 Klee. Now Constellation 6 augments in a pretty hefty way the utility of Sparks and Splash. While she's using Sparks and Splash, your other party members will continuously regenerate energy. And then when Sparks and Splash is used, all party members gain 10% pyro damage bonus for 25 seconds. So Klee gives your teammates defense down, energy up, and then additional energy up with Constellation 6, and then gets even more damage up with that Constellation 4. The Constellations do impact her pretty heavily when it comes to fully utilizing her at the end of the game. How good she is without those Constellations. She's losing the defense down, she's losing the energy recharge on her ultimate, and she's losing the giant burst damage from her energy elemental burst as well. Without it though, you can still utilize her to the fullest as a semi-burst damage dealer. Throw those Jumpty Dumpties in there. You have 2 charges. Get your Sparks and Splash out. Throw them into maybe a Venti ult or a Sucrose ult, or group them up with your main character, and you're going to have a good time there. Now, next up are the 4-star characters. Quickly, we have Noelle. You guys may have access to her already. Notably, this banner is going to be the first time that you're going to be able to actively chase after her constellations if you so desire. All 3 of these 4-star characters are all support type damage dealers. Noelle is known for offering heals as well as shields to your team, and then late game she can offer up some tremendous burst damage as well due to her unique effect of being able to augment her defense and add it into her attack, so she gains benefit of stacking both attack percent as well as defense percent. Her elemental skill Breastplate is known for putting that shield that can be passed around to your teammates, as well as activating her ability to heal your teammates as well. Sweeping Time is the skill that is going to be where all of her burst damage comes from, and that is because it is her elemental burst. It makes her do geo damage, gives her long range, and then Lich your attack also scale off of your defense as well as your attack. So you're going to get attack based off of your defense, and this goes up with skill level as well as constellation level. Noelle heavily benefits from getting constellations. This increases the ability for her to heal your team as well as increasing her damage at the same time. So it's very powerful, the constellations available to her. The last one, Must Be Spotless, constellation level 6 here, increases the attack based off of your defense, scaling by an additional 50% during her ultimate, Must Be Spotless. Additionally, every enemy you do defeat while your energy elemental burst is going to increase the duration of your elemental burst by an additional second, all the way up to an extra 10 seconds there. That's a very important constellation. The other constellation that's very important for her is the level 1 constellation, I Got Your Back. This is going to increase the rate that you are healing someone in your team, including herself. The heal procs will be increased to 100% as long as Sweeping Time and Breastplate are both currently active. So by far the most important constellations for Noelle. Level 1 constellation is fantastic to just make her way more effective of a healer in your team, maybe your secondary healer for Abyss. A lot of guys have access to Noelle. You can get that constellation here, and if you go all out and you try to get that constellation 6, you build around it, you'll have the damage to back up the support. You can do some incredible things with her in that regard. Next up is Sucrose, the character who is talked down, probably one of the most in the game, but also is a very powerful character. Sucrose is sort of a light Venti, but also offers up her own utility and allows your team to really sort of flaunt their damage on the battlefield. She's one of the best characters in the game for actually supporting and buffing up the damage your other characters can do. Her elemental skill, a stable Anemo Hypostasis Creation 6308, is a skill that she's going to use. It has a hefty cooldown of 15 seconds, but it's a way for her to drag enemies together and launch them in the air. And most importantly, she is the Anemo type character, so you can use the swirl effect in conjunction with Sucrose and her skills. You use the Viridescent Venerer set, and this is going to allow you to decrease the enemy's elemental resistance to the different elements that you are bringing in your team. Her elemental burst, Forbidden Creation, Isomer 75 Type 2, very similar. We've seen this before. Another way to pull enemies in, launch them up, proc swirl, lower resistances with that Viridescent Venerer set, and then in addition to that, it can also absorb the element of whatever other element you are currently hitting the monster with. So if you're doing Hydro, this can do both Anemo and Hydro damage and reduce that Hydro damage with the Venerer set and do bonus damage for your party there. Now, she also has some very important constellations as well as ascensions that we need to talk about here. Her first ascension here, Triggering Swirl with Sucrose, which just means that wind plus another element combination is going to increase the elemental mastery of every other matching character in your party by 50. And then her Ascension 4 is while you're using a stable Anemo Hypostasis or her Forbidden Creation, every other party member's elemental mastery will be increased by 20% of Sucrose's elemental mastery for 8 seconds. How do you abuse this, and what are you going to be doing with these two Ascensions? The two skill combinations, the two different elemental combinations that you can abuse this with the most are the ones based off of water and fire, or fire and ice. So you have melt and vaporize. This is because these ones sort of copycat however hard you hit that monster. So if you have Sucrose in here, say you want to do bonus damage with your Mona or bonus damage with your Diluc, you can lower the fire resistance for Diluc. You can lower the water resistance as well for Mona. Whatever character you have in your party, fire characters, water characters. So you have the lowered elemental resistance, and then you proc vaporize, you proc melt. In addition to just building your character for attack percent, crit hit chance percent, crit hit damage, buffing up their damage all at the same time, traditionally you're not going to have enough stats to put elemental mastery to boost that damage up even higher. Sucrose can do that for you. You can stack the elemental mastery on Sucrose because she's there to support for your team, and you can give your damage dealer a substantial amount of elemental mastery to then increase the effects of vaporize as well as melt even higher. And that's really what Sucrose is all about, and that's at Constellation 0. Constellations for Sucrose, very first one, very important here. It's going to help you with that 15-second cooldown on the elemental skill. It's going to give you an additional charge of your elemental skill. That is very powerful. This way you can use her more often in Abyss, and it's going to be a very strong option for you there. Constellation 6 is also an incredibly powerful constellation once again. So just like Noelle, 1 and 6 are her two best constellations. Number 6 here is if Forbidden Creation Ice Number 75 triggers an elemental absorption, which is very easy to do. You just hit the enemy with an attack that's an element, so pyro damage will trigger the elemental absorption for pyro. All party members will gain a 20% elemental damage bonus for that element during its duration. So she can lower the resistances to that element with the Viridescent Venerer set. Then she can buff the damage of those character types on your team, give them the elemental mastery, and then you set up a melt or you set up a vaporize elemental combination attack for that character, and you will do a tremendous amount of damage with Sucrose in your party as well, as long as you're using her correctly. She's a very skill-intensive, high IQ character, but when you get it right, you can get it done, and it's going to be very strong for you. Now, Xingqiu here is very similar to Noelle. He's a support-type damage dealer character. Like Noelle, where Noelle can provide barriers and heal your team, Xingqiu here will go out of his way here to reduce the damage that you take, and this is with his elemental skill, the Guhua Sword Fatal Rain Screen. His elemental skill is going to come out, do some damage, and it's going to reduce the damage that you take for a couple of times when you get hit here. It's also going to gain increased damage reduction for your character based off of his hydro damage percent bonus increase. So hydro damage percent bonus on artifacts is going to be good for him. You're going to want at least one of those. Get that on him for you in his artifact slot so you can utilize him in that way. His elemental burst here, very similar. We've seen things like this before. He's going to come out, do hydro damage. He's going to leave these swords behind, very similar to someone like Kea. And these swords that are floating around are going to benefit your other characters when you swap him in and out. So he's going to be a sort of a damage reduction, hydro damage bonus character. He's going to make your characters do bonus hydro damage and reduce the damage that they take when they get hit. Now, his Ascensions at level 1, when a range sword is shattered or its duration expires, this is from his elemental skill, it's going to heal the character based on Xingqiu's max HP. So you want to build him for hydro damage, HP percent if you want him to be your healer as well. That way you're going to have the extra damage reduction. You're going to get the extra healing from him if you have him on your team. And then you want to build him up for a little bit of, attack percent. So he gains that damage bonus to go with his hydro damage bonus there. His Ascension 4 is going to give him 20% additional hydro damage bonus. So this helps him do extra hydro damage, but also helps him reduce the damage that you take because the damage reduction that he does give your party is based off of his hydro damage. His first constellation is pretty important. It increases the maximum number of rain swords that you can have by an additional 1. So this offers up more damage. It offers up another damage reduction. It's just quite strong altogether. Constellation 2 is also pretty powerful in his supportive aspect role. This is because it's going to increase the Guha Sword Rain Cutter duration by 3 seconds, but also importantly, decreases the hydro resistance of enemies hit by the sword attacks by 15% for 4 seconds there. 4 seconds doesn't sound like that long of a time, but remember, they're going to be out there constantly hitting your enemies, so it's going to be basically active as long as those swords are floating around your team there. Those are the 2 most important constellations for him. The other ones just kind of increase his damage by a little amount there. And also the last one, Constellation 6, is going to help out the energy that he gets back to allow him to more easily and more readily access his elemental burst. So that's going to be this banner here. Klee, very powerful character. Do note that the burst damage that she does do is still strong, but it gets very strong once you have Constellation 4 Klee, and that defense down 23% from Constellation 2 Klee plays a lot into what some of you guys out there may have been seeing in videos or guides that involve Klee there. Noelle, very powerful starter character. A lot of you guys already have her. Now is your chance to get that extra ascension, or not ascension, but extra copy of Noelle, so you can get that Constellation level 1 to make her heals feel way more less RNG. I know way more less RNG, but less RNG on her heals. That's going to be a fantastic option for you. If you're still looking for an Anemo character, Sucrose is still in the pool. If you want to have the big brain to put that team together where you are doing melt or you are doing vaporize elemental combinations, she can buff the damage up out of your team into the stratosphere, especially if you get her to Constellation 6. And just like Noelle, Sucrose has a whole new meaning of power at Constellation 6, whereas Xingqiu, he just kind of works pretty well out of the box. He's not the best character in the game, though. If I was to rate him, is he more than usable? Yes, but if you want someone that can sort of reduce the damage your team takes and heals your team a little bit, Noelle just kind of has that on lock way more effectively than Xingqiu does. As well, Noelle can scale incredibly well into the late game, especially once you get your hands on those constellations. Now, the last thing we want to talk about real quick is there is a second banner. This is the new Wish banner here. The new 5 stars, if you are pulling on any sort of weapon banner, this has the Wolf's Gravestone as well as the lovely dovely good old new 5-star book here. The Wolf's Gravestone is known to be, it is very notorious for being a very powerful, extremely strong, great sword. This thing boosts your base attack percent, has attack percent on the weapon, and then when you damage an enemy under 30% or lower HP, the base attack of your entire team goes up for 12 seconds as well. So, character that's wielding the weapon, base attack up, party base attack for your whole party once the damage on the enemy is racking up and they're falling low in HP. It's just the all-out aggressive option for any sort of Claymore user there. Now, the book option, the catalyst here, is the Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds. It has crit hit rate as a secondary stat, so very strong if you're trying to gear out crit hit damage, etc. near the end game. It increases your movement speed passively, and then while you're in battle, you gain a stacking elemental damage bonus. Every 4 seconds, you'll gain a stack. It has a max of 4 stacks. It starts at 6% a stack at Refine level 0. And if you swap out the stack sleeve, it is also a fantastic book for you, especially for someone like Klee, who at lower level constellations, you're not going to want to swap her out all that often. You're going to need to stay in there for Sparks and Splash. So obviously kind of threw those things in there together. And all you Diluc lovers out there, the Wolf's Gravestone is a fantastic option for you as well. So hopefully this, guys, gave you some in-depth, but also pretty quick information as to the characters on the banner there, so it helps you make those decisions in a Genshin Impact. Until then, guys, stay safe out there. Have fun. If you want to see more stuff, you know where the channel is. Subscribe button's right there. And I'll see you in the next one.